there is no way in hell that Russell Westbrook is coming off the bench this year. All right, think Allen Iverson in that regard. When he first departed for Philly and Detroit, he wanted to start, and Rip Hamilton was like, I ain't coming off no damn bench. Rich Hamilton refused to come off the bench. That's where that friction in Motown took place, because Rip Hamilton wasn't having that. And he was right, because he was a stout shooter, big-time shooter, not to mention the fact he was an NBA champion. Why the hell should he come off the bench, even if it was for the great Allen Iverson? Rip Hamilton wasn't having it, okay? So let's get that out the way. Russell Westbrook ain't doing that. That's number one. Number two, they can't coexist with each other, Rondo and Russell Westbrook on the floor together, because on the floor together for 7 minutes, they were minus 15. So we know how bad that was. When it was them two and Melo on the floor together, I think they were like a minus 13. I mean, it was pretty bad. So we understand that. Here's where it becomes a bit challenging, because Russell Westbrook, is not a good shooter. He can hit some jump shots occasionally, but he is not a good shooter. This is the part about his ego where it's almost justifiable, because I don't consider him selfish. I don't consider him a bad teammate. I think some of the things that people have said about him, I think is cruel. And I don't blame him for having an attitude when people are trying to attack his character, because that's not fair to him. And I will acknowledge that. He leaves it all on the court. He goes all out.
Agreed.
You got Steph Curry. You got Damian Lillard. You got Chris Paul. You got Luka. You understand? You got Jamal Murray and these boys. Understand that if you're Russell Westbrook, that ego is justified, because, wait a minute, these brothers are going to be putting up buckets now. So since you're accustomed to doing the same, to have to now be in a system where you're deferential, obviously, to LeBron and AD, you're going to find yourself getting smoked by other people playing your position, because that's how the narrative is going to be. We can talk about trapping, people getting the ball out of their hands, other people getting the ball, but the bottom line is they're going to look at you, and they're going to look at the other team's point guards, and they're going to see them putting up buckets. You going to look at the box score and know you not. And as a result, it ain't going to fly. So somehow, some way, the Lakers have to figure this out, Swagoo. And if anybody could do it, it's LeBron. But damn. Asking Russell Westbrook to come off the bench when he's been a starter and a finisher his entire career. And the first time you are in L.A., your hometown, coming off the bench, I got a better shot of walking on water. I got a better shot of walking on water.
I've seen you try that a couple times.
How about that? Go ahead, Swagoo. Go ahead, man.
Listen, I think it goes back to both of y'all points. And with legs, it's mentality for Russ. He going to have to lean into the latter part of his line when you start talking about assists and rebounds, as opposed to the point scoring, and allow that to be facilitated by LeBron. I could see Russ running point with Bron and Anthony Davis on the floor. I think Bron is mature enough to understand that I need to have Russ involved in this game, and maybe tell Russ, hey, your role changes, but you still in this lineup. That's what I thought this would be when it first was announced that he was going to L.A. Look, it is crazy for anybody to think that Russell Westbrook didn't know he was going to have to sacrifice with what he was coming to. This is about running the offense through AD. This is about LeBron facilitating, and it's about Russ finding his way. But I'm thinking, I hear Legs say that, come off the bench and play with the twos. Yes, conventionally, yes. Because what did we say about the Lakers? When LeBron leaves the floor, there's a drop-off. And then Rondo had a phenomenal bubble. He had a phenomenal way of facilitating. He got AD involved. He understood the flow. So I already think you got your second guy coming off of the bench. It boils down to what both of you said. What is Russ willing to do? And if Russ is going to be selfish and say, I want to be the triple-double guy, we are all sitting here with a mute point, because it ain't going to work. And we all know that it's not going to work. But if he wants to lean into assists and rebounds and allow himself to be a third option offensively, and LeBron says, hey, man, you facilitate. I'm a better off-the-ball player. I'm a better shooter. And then when we get in particular times and certain situations in games, you know LeBron is going to have the damn ball. And Russ may have to go to the bench and allow somebody else to come on. But I think that's how you maneuver through this season until they figure out this rapport.
Because I think, to your point, look, he went there for a reason, and what he's going to say and what he probably felt internally was he wants one of these badly. That's why he ended up there, okay? Problem is this. You can say it You can change your role. You can do certain things. We all are alone in the darkest recesses of our own minds. What's in his mind when he leaves the arena every night and he drives back to his crib? Because what you just said, I just chased Damian Lillard, Steph Curry, all these elite point guards around. I still got to guard those dudes, but they're not having to guard me and respect me and honor me in the same way they used to. So, yeah, okay, maybe at some point they get hot. I'm part of a winning team. I got a great chance to win a championship. Does that fulfill him personally as a player? So is he genuinely happy? It's one thing to say, I'll do anything it takes. It's another thing when you're alone in your own thoughts. Are you genuinely fulfilled that you have sacrificed that much of who you were as a player?
And is it a waste of your talent?
In fairness to you, to articulate, to eloquate, to really illuminate your point, rather, there's no evidence that that has been the case. He was in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. He was the man. He went to Houston. He made it very, very clear. He doesn't want to sit around and be a spectator to the great James Harden. He's great in his own right, and he wants to play the way that he wants to play. This is what he told Rockets management and ownership. Then you end up in Washington. Obviously, you wasn't asked to take a step back, even though it was Bradley Beal's team. They brought you there for a reason, and he was still allowed to excel. And now here you are in L.A. with LeBron and Anthony Davis. So, again, asking him to step back, I'm not saying he won't do it. I'm saying
we got to make of all of this. What did we learn about the Lakers in this loss?
So I'm not going to sit up here and be a person, legs, that goes, the Lakers are done. That's not, we both look at basketball throughout the entire lens of how the game is being played. But I've had some conversations over the last several days with some younger players in the league, which is kind of shocking to me because I've never heard people say this about a LeBron James team, where they don't find the Lakers intimidating at all. People are actually excited about playing this team. And then when you actually start, I was at the Nets game last night, but I came back home and I'm actually watching the Lakers game for a minute. I'm like, man, seeing how they defend, seeing how they play, the lack of urgency, that last minute and a half of the game, that was almost embarrassing to watch how they actually tried to execute some things. And I think that's more revealing to me than anything. Now, granted, LeBron James hasn't played, but if that's Cameron Payne talking trash to him, I think there's a level of players looking at them and saying, we don't really respect the Lakers. Even though they got a championship, this team is older. They don't play with a sense of urgency. And, yeah, they could turn on here and there, but maybe they won't. And maybe a team like OKC, the youngest team in the league last night, beats them at home, and they're having fun on the basketball court. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
Having fun, smiling, young players smiling, playing against the Lakers. That's shocking to me.
And I can see why, because you think, as a player, and Jay, I know you'd agree with this, what makes you uncomfortable is pressure, people in your face dictating to you where you can go on the court, physicality. There's none of that with the Lakers. So when you play them, you feel like we can run what we want. Everybody's going to get numbers tonight. So that speaks to your point of why teams aren't afraid of them. But what I saw last night, at the end of that game, okay, they're down three different times. Now, I don't have as much of a problem with Carmelo's shot because now it's deep into the game. You don't have much time, and that was probably the worst inbounds pass maybe in the history of basketball. A bullet 25-footer from out of bounds right to Carmelo Anthony's pocket. He just didn't execute the shot. But those other two, those were both out of timeouts, down three, with a ton of time on the clock. And you chose out of a timeout to go to a Russell Westbrook pull-up three, followed by a Malik Monk pull-up three. With all the time in the world to execute, get to the rim, cut it to one, play the foul game, extend the game, what you normally do. But I think the league is so obsessed with the three-point shot that now the mentality is that you have to get a three to tie it with all that time on the clock. And what it showed me was lack of poise. It showed not a very high basketball IQ. Now, LeBron wasn't out there, and obviously that elevates your IQ collectively. IQ was terrible. They added a bunch of veteran guys, Jay, to what you just said, that I think were brought in for the postseason. Therefore, the regular season is just not going to be prioritized. Now, the problem with that is last year you would think they would have learned their lesson. They had some injuries, but they also preserved guys. And they thought, man, we can come out of the 7-hole. We got AD and LeBron. You're not doing that in the Western Conference. So all that talk about as long as they're healthy on April 15th, it doesn't matter where they're at, I disagree with. You're not going on the road in this Western Conference and winning 3 straight series, because in one of those series, you're going to lose the first 2 road games, and you're not going to win 4 out of 5. So I think the mentality around regular season, doesn't matter. We blew a 26-point lead to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are a bottom feeder in this league. To me, that's concerning. Just the overall mentality of this roster and the way that they played down the stretch of that game. They did not get smarter in the offseason. And you saw it last night, and that's one of the worst losses we've seen in the league this year.
I was going to say one last thing. So when Darius Bazley steals the ball at the end, and they're down 5, which is I don't care what anybody says, man. 4 or 5 seconds left. It's a legitimate basketball play. Could he have pulled it out? Sure. But I think that was a very big sign. Russell Westbrook being pissed off by that.
Yeah.
Being angered by that, getting ejected by that. That's how teams view them, right? Like, I can steal the ball. Let me go ahead and flush it real quick. Because that's how they feel when they play against the Lakers.
Yeah.
They feel like, we can do these type of things. And I like that Russell was like, no, that's not the right way you do it.
You liked Russell Westbrook's response there, that he got upset at the end of the game.
I need to see a pulse from this team. Like, I know we're at the beginning stages of the season, but I want to see a pulse psychologically that we are going to fight. And sometimes I feel when LeBron James is not on the court, there's a lot of questions around what this team does offensively. And one of the key losses that nobody talks about, Legs, when you lose Jason Kidd to the Dallas Mavericks, all the conversations I would hear from the Lakers camp about conversations between LeBron James and Jason Kidd, how they felt like they were on the same wavelength offensively with how they would scheme for different things. Now you have to make a bet on LeBron James and Russell Westbrook figuring that out, because Frank Vogel is known for being more of a defensive-minded coach, which opens up a whole other conversation, because defensively, they're not good. They're ranked 25th defensively in the league right now. So this is going to put a lot of pressure on Frank Vogel from a coaching perspective.
And you look at the Lakers' wins already so far. I mean, even against the Spurs, it took them to overtime. Or you look against the Grizzlies, it took some missed free throws from Ja to kind of get them out of that game or get them a chance to get the win. And you talk about needing to see a pulse. Russ gets a tech. Or it's Dwight Howard and AD. Certainly there's some kind of emotion being shown. But I think to the word you used earlier, it's not joyful. No. It's not fun. Yeah. There's emotion, there's a pulse, but it's like, it's not fun yet for these veteran guys. And for me, Legs, I feel what was most disappointing was they couldn't stop the bleeding in letting go of a 26-point lead. And you've got all these veteran guys. It's exactly the type of group you would think shouldn't make that kind of mistake or should know how to close out a game. So at what point this season, are you willing to say, I'm starting to feel concerned? Right now, we're like, it's early, they're veteran. What point would you be concerned with these types of things mounting?
We're 25 games in. We're still talking about this kind of stuff. Blowing leads, not beating teams that you clearly have to beat, particularly a team that's going to win probably 20 to 25 games in the Thunder. That's what they're going to do this year. To not be able to close that deal after getting that big lead. If this is still going on, 15, 20 games from now, and they still haven't worked out the dynamic between Russell Westbrook and LeBron, because I still think that is going to take a lot of time to figure out how does Frank Vogel stagger their minutes enough so that Russell Westbrook can stay true to himself, who he is as a player, and impact the game the way he's used to. Now, obviously, you're going to have to close the game with both guys. So that's a whole nother issue. One possession games, last 5 minutes. What's Russell Westbrook's role offensively? That's going to come. But in the meantime, what about the first 42 minutes? You've got to figure out how to stagger that. So this, to me, major work in progress. I'm not even remotely close to saying, oh, man, was I wrong about the Lakers? We're not there yet. Every team in this league right now is a work in progress, except, I think, Milwaukee. I think that's the closest thing to we know what they are. Everybody else is trying to figure all these things out. The Lakers at the top of the list.
Frank Vogel, sir.